So, kia ora tātou. Nice to see some familiar names on my screen and some unfamiliar ones as well. Welcome to this further Zui in the series of online events that we've been having with Museums Aotearoa and National Services Te Pairangi. Just a few little bits of housekeeping before we start, and then we will launch straight in. So just a reminder to keep your audio on mute, and we will have the Q&A via the chat. We've got 3 speakers. So I do suggest you select the speaker view, which is in the upper right of your Zoom screen, so that you can get a good view of people, although you can always just scroll through and see who else is online with us today. And I hope that for everybody it's a good Friday. It's been a pretty horrible week weather-wise here, and now the sunshine is shining in Wellington, so we're feeling very, very Friday-ish, which is nice. We've got 3 speakers today, and we're going to have each of them introduce themselves and bring a different perspective on marketing to us in today's environment. We'll start with Paula Gaelic, the Curator Manager at Western Bay Museum in Katikati. Then we'll hear from David Perks from Wellington NZ, who's also the Regional Tourism Representative on the Tourism Industry Aotearoa Board. And then from Craig Boody, who is Marketing Coordinator at Te Papa. So I'm going to hand over to Paula now. I will just unmute you. Paula, over to you.
Kia ora. Western Bay Museum, how we communicate with and reaches its stakeholders and potential audience. I'm just going to give you a little brief on our background to how we got to this point. Western Bay Museum is owned by the community, for the community, and for all of us. Museums face many challenges and financial constraints, and there never seems to be enough money in the marketing budgets. Forever in survival mode, we must face this challenge with a different strategy. Marketing at Western Bay Museum for me has been about building strong relationships and collaboration, which has taken me 8 years in the making. Coming from a sales and marketing background with international market leaders of high reputation and credibility, I was up for a new challenge. And I joined Katikati Heritage Museum in 2011, a private collection with land and substandard buildings that had been purchased by our community at the cost of $1 million. Of course, it was unsustainable and without council support of any type. This had created a huge divide in our community and carried with it the unsustainable debt. That facility closed in 2014, and by 2016, Western Bay Museum was opened with council support of 35% of our operational expenses in a newly refurbished building in the heart of our small town of Katikati. Right from the outset, my public relations skills were tested, but I felt the cause was worthy, otherwise I wouldn't be here today. It has been an exhausting journey as I wear many hats being manager of Western Bay Museum. Roy Clear, the ex-director of Auckland War Memorial Museum, provided me with a lot of guidance and wise counsel. A little daunted by the academics in the museum sector and without any museum qualification myself, Roy reassured me to use my own skills, and in fact, that was more important at the time than museum qualification. I had to convince council, organisations and our somewhat aggravated community that funding from Western Bay of Plenty District Council was paramount to our success going forward. From experience, I knew people buy from people they like. I had to get Western Bay Museum on the map and the forefront of people's minds. It takes time to build trust and respect. Katikati has a population of 5,000 and Western Bay of Plenty District Council has 22,000 ratepayers. Tauranga, just 30 minutes down the road, unfortunately doesn't have a museum, and they have their own council, Tauranga City Council. So this is what I did and continue to do so today. And I will not compromise on quality and high standards. If we can't afford it, I don't do it. No DIY. So starting with building strong relationships. With Katikati, our events and promotions, Western Bay of Plenty District Council, Bay of Plenty Regional Council, our iwi, Creative Bay of Plenty, Tourism Bay of Plenty, Open Air Art, Katikati RSA, Lions, Rotary, Community Board, Archives, and most importantly, our local newspaper, the Katikati Advertiser. I got to know them, their vision, and all of their staff. The collaboration with all other groups, environmental groups, theatre groups, Department of Conservation, schools, whoever I could connect a story to in the museum. I took every networking opportunity I could, Business After 5, Chamber of Commerce, Smart Growth, and Priority 1. Another thing that I did marketing-wise was our thematic exhibitions. I design and change our exhibition gallery 3 times a year, strategically aligned to local and national anniversaries. Showcasing local families is a real draw card for us. People love their family's name in the spotlight. A sense of community pride emerges from this as a result. For Mills, I invite all surrounding eyesight staff regularly, keeping them updated and informed. Yes, speaking, I go to every engagement I can and make it relevant and interesting. I let them feel my enthusiasm and passion for my job. I engage with the audience, and if they ask me to speak for 30 minutes, I'll speak for 20 and then ask questions. I feel that way we are engaging in conversation rather than me speaking at them. Paybacks. We have a group experience here in the museum, which includes a museum tour, scones made from our wood range oven, and tea served in our bone china collection. I invite some groups to this experience for free so I can thank them and appreciate their support they give us. But this also introduces them to our fastest growing financial stream. They then go and tell everyone how great it was and return with paying visitors. I do mail outs. I know my target audience, and our group experience is extremely popular with retirement villages, Lions Club, garden clubs, vintage machinery and car clubs. I find mail drops for this sector is most effective. Press releases, posters and flyers are shared on a regular basis. Our Facebook page doesn't have a huge following at this stage, so I rely on other organisations to share those articles and press releases for me. Here we have 2 radio stations that will support events at the museum, or not-for-profit organisations, The Breeze and Whānau Radio, and I keep them updated with any events. We have 3 education programs here, and I use this as a marketing tool as well. 2 are sponsored, Treasuring Our Place, an environmental education program, Taonga Aotearoa, and that connects with 2,000 year 5 and 6 students. I acquire 2,000 student connections a year with our year 5 and 6 students from Katikati Primary. We also have the Katikati Lions Club Museum Learning Experience, which Lions sponsor all of our year 5 and 6 students at Katikati Primary to come to every exhibition. This is designed so that career pathways can be opened for those young students. And the students love that museum. They love our museum, and they're our best advocates, are walking advertisements, and drag mum and dad or grandma and granddad in later on to show them what they've been doing at the museum. We have events every year. My biggest coup was establishing a relationship with University of Waikato music faculty, which every 2 years brings a very high quality performance or concert to our town. And it also brings a new audience to the museum that has maybe not come in the past. The alternative years, we run like a magic lantern show, and in August this year, we're having Murder in the Museum, an interactive theatre. We have a road show, so we're taking our museum on the road through the summer months. We do 8 days of A&P shows, a Te Puke Farm Day, and a vintage machinery and tractor club day. We churn butter, we give out tasting samples, we shell maize, make corn flour, demonstrate the rope making machine. We're museum in action. We're all dressed in costume, and this is a really good promotional arm of the museum. Sponsorships. I sell off everything in the museum, whether it be our thematic exhibitions or permanent displays throughout the museum. It covers our uniforms, it covers school programs, events that I wouldn't be able to afford to put on with the sponsors. And this has grown over time, and a new buy-in is achieved by selling sponsorships. Of course, I'm careful with who I select, that their focus, vision and philosophies align with the museum. Our financial picture is we get 35% of our funding from council, 37% from grants, 17% from sponsorships, and 10% from activities. We are now through one of my platinum sponsors and donations from other supporters. We have recently employed Zest Consultants to totally rebrand our museum and redesign all of our marketing platforms, including a new website. The investment of over $30,000 is a big ask for an institution like us. But I really believe that the time is right to do this, and particularly after COVID. This has led to Zest Consulting also doing a new business and strategic plan for us. And when I say us, for the trust in myself. Kitty and Kitty Community Centre and Western Bay Museum are now applying for a working together fund through the DIA. And this is to employ a communications manager, a shared role to constantly update all of our digital and social media, to design posters and flyers, do press releases, take photographs and films, so that we can use this material for accountabilities and promotional activities. Te Papa National Services are the ultimate support and backup for me. I shout this from the rooftops. When we have expert knowledge exchange working in the museum, I open that to the public, opening their minds to what museum qualified people do. And it is fabulous and provides credibility. Donors' confidence rises. Te Papa National Services have also provided us with a museum development plan so we can grow and develop as a reputable museum. Having their input and endorsement, their guidance and advice is crucial. And with COVID-19, I've now made the museum free to all of our Western Bay ratepayers. This time is right. In today's environment, I know we rely heavily on my previous years of hard work in our region to get their support and loyalty in return. It's paying off. A small regional museum we are with big city museum goals. I believe in doing the very best we possibly can. to exhaust all avenues and to be professional at all times, to deliver on those promises that I make to our stakeholders, to keep our focus on our roles and responsibilities as a museum, and to strive for excellence. Marketing and audience satisfaction is ongoing work, and I believe it is never completed, and museums are well worth it. So I hope that I've covered a small part of our marketing strategies here. I know it's particularly hard at this time.
Thank you, Paula. That's an absolute exemplar of how to know your local community and your audiences and work with them and grow them. And it sounds as though you're getting the payback really coming in now.
Yeah, it's really paid off, Philippa.
That's fantastic. So just moving out from that then, David, we're going to ask you to talk a bit about the features of domestic tourism and how that has changed in the COVID environment.
Kia ora, everybody. Thank you, Philippa and Paula. That's an exceptionally amazing story. Well done, and it just sounds amazing. I want to go to Kadikadi straight away. Hey,
Right.
hey, I'm sure that like lots of you, I've been on lots of Zoom calls over the last however long it is now, and it's really good to have the opportunity to speak to a whole different group of people, although there are a few names I recognise actually. So if you are somebody I know, hello, good to touch base with you. Hey, so yeah, domestic tourism, I suppose. Wellington's always, so who am I? I have a general manager title at Wellington NZ, our regional economic development agency. I am the chair of Regional Tourism New Zealand, and as the chair of Regional Tourism New Zealand, I happen to sit alongside Philippa on the tourism industry Aotearoa board. So we laugh sometimes that we're kind of like the local government representatives on that industry board, and it gives us a little bit different view of than that of many of the people around the table. So yeah, Wellington very into its domestic tourism, and so we've been very careful, I suppose, during this period where suddenly the whole of New Zealand is looking at domestic tourism, to make sure we don't get carried away, and that we still do recognise that domestic tourists, who now are all our tourists, are still Kiwis. They're not suddenly going to turn into Germans or Canadians or Chinese. They're still Kiwis, and they'll still have that same value set that New Zealanders had 6 months ago. And what does that mean? Well, we know that because New Zealanders live in New Zealand, there's a bit of a sense of, yeah, I'm interested, but I can always do it another time because I'll be here again. We also know that whilst Kiwis love the idea of getting around and about New Zealand, that they have other things in their lives too that they have to do. They have to go to work. They've got kids that have to go to school. They have to go and do the groceries. The kids perhaps play sport. There's all kinds of things that New Zealanders are involved in that mean that they don't go travelling every weekend. And of course, one of the other restraints on travel is that it costs money. So we can't just afford to be out there all the time. And I think historically, New Zealanders have tended to save their money to make trips overseas. Simply saying, oh, well, they'll now spend that money in New Zealand is probably, I think, unrealistic. And so we have to really concentrate on thinking about how we can give New Zealanders reasons to travel in New Zealand and do it more frequently during this period. And we also need to be mindful that if we think of perhaps the typical German tourist will come to New Zealand once in their lifetime. They know they're not going to come back. And so they do want to see everything and do everything in one go. And so they will find every little nook and cranny of the country. Whereas typically New Zealanders will, well, typically New Zealanders live in one of the three main cities, and if not, probably in that upper North Island triangle. if they're going to go away for the weekend, it has to be somewhere they can access, either by driving or by easy plane connections. They're not going to go away for the weekend for somewhere where there's, which is too far away or too expensive to get to. We also know that, and I think this would be true if we were talking of any nationality, in our own countries, we're probably a little bit less inquisitive to learn about our place than we would be if we were in another country. So getting people to actually go, oh, that's different, I'd like to go and do that, I'd like to experience that, can be really challenging. And indeed, we know that Kiwis like familiarity. There's a whole lot of stuff going on about how we should all go and do something different for our summer holidays at the moment. But I can be pretty sure that I'd be right in saying that for a lot of Aucklanders, they will either go to Northland or Coromandel or the Bay of Plenty and go to the beach. We're not suddenly going to change that. People love those places. It's their kind of home away from home, and people like that familiarity. The other side I think is interesting is that I think coming out of the COVID period, Kiwis are really proud. We're proud of what we've achieved as a nation, but at the same time, we're less likely to be influenced. We're probably a little bit more skeptical. We need to be absolutely persuaded that it's worth stepping through a doorway and doing something different. So that makes us have to think about how we motivate Kiwis to get around and about and do stuff they wouldn't already do. It's interesting, if I kind of think back to April, there was a stage where we were hearing very distinct messaging from government that we could expect to be in level 4 till the end of May, perhaps in level 3 till the end of July, in level 2 till Christmas, and we didn't know what level 2 was anyway. And so I think we're all a little bit surprised by just how quickly we've got back to something that feels out there quite normal. It almost feels like it's normal. But at the same time, we see the news from other parts of the world, and we can see that as other parts of the world try and open up, that it's failing for them. And I think Melbourne is the obvious example of this. Australia's done a pretty good job of handling COVID. They've opened up, and suddenly they've got problems, and this is happening in other parts of the world further afield as well. So what does the year ahead look like for us? I think, and it'd be interesting to hear your sentiments. It feels as though in June, because Kiwis could travel around New Zealand, that they've made the very most of that opportunity. Normally, this is probably the quietest month of the year for domestic travel. What we're seeing, I think, particularly in the metropolitan areas, but also the regions close to the metropolitan areas, is there's been a good level of domestic tourism. And from everything I hear, it sounds like the upcoming school holiday period is going to be, starting today, I think, is going to be a strong period as well for domestic tourism. Is that going to carry on? And I think that's a really big question. People have all gone and had a weekend away, or perhaps they're taking some days during this holiday period. We know that Kiwis know that they're pretty much going to be forced to stay in New Zealand over the summer holiday period. What are they going to do in between times? And I think this is where it gets really interesting, because I think given the global economy is not in the best state, given that people will have had a break, that a lot of Kiwis will just be feeling, well, some will be feeling very tight about what they've got in their pockets. Others will be concerned about job security and such. And so it may well be that we go into a period through the end of winter and into spring where travel domestically is still not what we'd like it to be, or even what it normally is. So it's for me, it's really important for any tourism business, and of course across New Zealand this is represented really well by the museum sector, large and small, big city, small town, rural, provincial, metropolitan. It's about how do we put things on to make people travel here and now? What's going to motivate them to do it right now, not to put it off until another time, but actually to get out there and do stuff and actually enjoy everything that New Zealand's got to offer. So it's with that in mind that we as Artons worked with MB to say it's all very well having a national campaign promoting travel, but actually the conversion needs to happen at a detail level. And I think the opportunity that's been provided for all the regional tourism organisations, and hopefully you all know who they are. We know that Paula knows about Bay of Plenty Tourism and Kristen and the team there. Hopefully all of you know who those people are in your regions, because they've all been provided with funding. So, and even the smaller regions, so I think of the Wairarapa in my part of New Zealand, they've got $400,000 extra to pump into rebuilding the tourism economy and get travel flowing domestically now. So do make sure that you know what they're doing so you can leverage off what they're doing, but also that they know what you're doing. What's the message that they can use to say, you've got to go to this particular place and do this particular thing now, because now's the only time you can do it. What are you going to have on in the school holidays that's really going to appeal to New Zealanders looking for their own story in your place, looking for the story of pride we've all got in Aotearoa, New Zealand right now, and so that becomes an experience that, again, like Paula said, if you get those people coming through and having those experiences now, it may well be that their word of mouth advertising, their sharing of their experience on social media becomes your next set of customers as well. So really, I would encourage you looking at what you can do alongside your regional tourism organisation, leveraging that significant investment they've been provided with from central government, and then working out what your events program is that's going to make people come into your place here and now. Thank you.
Thank you, David. While you were talking, I was just thinking there's the Digit domestic marketing tool. Do you know if that has been or needs to be updated in the current environment, or do you think that's still relevant?
Yeah, sure. So the Digit tool was put together by Tourism Industry Aotearoa about 5 years ago. And it is actually being updated right now by Colmar Brunton for Tourism New Zealand. But the program is still available online. And if you haven't used it, it's really worth going and having a look. Effectively, you can say, we'll use your example, Paula, my attraction, my museum is in Karikati. This is where I'm thinking I should do my marketing. This is who I think I should work with. You can then put various parameters in, and it will tell you, say, how many people it would be interested in your product in Hamilton, and what type of media they use that influences their decision making. So well worth going and having a look. It is being updated, but I was looking at it myself the other day. It's still pretty good actually, and I wouldn't wait. I would get in there and have a look.
That's great. Thank you, David. I've put the link in the chat, and I do encourage you to have a look at it. I know that we got some help with it for Shantytown, I think it was, some 2 or 3 years ago on the West Coast, and they found it really helpful. So it certainly has been used by people in our sector. So drilling down into the specific then, Craig is going to talk a little bit about a new initiative that Te Papa's doing.
Kia ora tātou, ko Craig Brady aho. Thanks for the opportunity to join you all this afternoon from a sunny Wellington. And so I thought I'd share some of the insights and learnings and I guess the process that I've gone through with launching a new marketing campaign to bring people back into Te Papa, because we know that that international market has dropped off. So I've got a small presentation to share, and hopefully it links in through to what you said, David, and I could definitely totally relate to what you've been talking about too, Paula. So hope we all connect up there too. So I'll have a go at sharing my screen there, if that's okay. Cool. So, see if I can. Not quite able to share my screen. Yeah. There we go. Okay, cool. hopefully we can all see that, or part of it anyway. So, so this is a campaign we've just launched. It's been out and about for about a week, 10 days now. And I thought I'd talk firstly about the research I did into the campaign, the strategy that I took, what we're trying to achieve, who we targeted and how we went about that, some of the headlines and positioning that I took, and also share some of the creative that come out of it as well. So I'll try and talk around things that we might have done differently as a result of COVID-19, but it's also some of the things that have stayed the same as well. So the process I went through, first of all, just to glean some research, trying to understand more about our audiences and segments, and had they changed. We used the Morris Hargroves McIntyre customer audience segmentation. And so I felt it was important to refresh myself with those segments, try and understand which segments were going to be help achieve our objectives, and had they changed or had they not? That was a question I wanted to find out as well. So, and also try and understand some of the trends in the tourism industry. So some of those motivations for travelling, as you pointed out there, David. And so we got on the phone, did a Zoom with Anna Calver at Wellington NZ and Kelsey, trying to understand what their strategy was and what they were doing, and trying to partner up with them and try and link in some of those key messages and the timings, and they were great, fantastic, and were able to provide me with some research that they had received from Tourism New Zealand. So that was a great resource as well. I also found it really valuable to get out on the shop floor and talking to our visitors, trying to understand their appetite to come into a public space, come back into Te Papa, and what brought them into Te Papa, and I guess try and gauge their willingness and appetite to travel as well. That was valuable. So I've been doing a fair bit of that, and also talking to our hosts. They're a great resource. They've got their finger on the pulse. They know exactly what's going on. So I was able to get a whole bunch of, I guess, understanding and motivations around through doing that. And also I signed up to a whole bunch of free research that's available. Some research receptive and Research First have been really great in providing a lot of free research to people to try and help them along this journey. As we know, it is a new environment, but it also is, it does feel quite normal too, as David said, and trying to think ahead a little bit as well. So that was sort of the process I went about to try and really understand how I was going to build a strategy for this campaign. So the strategy really was to increase awareness that Te Papa is open. During level 2, we had a soft opening in some of our exhibitions and weren't fully open because they were really high touch interactive experiences. So we had to play it fairly safe with that. And so feedback I got from talking to the hosts and our visitors when I was on the shop floor was that, yeah, there wasn't really enough for children to do, and we weren't really aware that everything was open. So I needed to make a pretty bold statement that actually we are open for business, to make sure that people felt confident that they could come to Te Papa and have that awesome experience that they usually get when they're here. And also to drive conversions, to get people back in the door, have that confidence to come into our cafes, do our tours, and enjoy the exhibitions that we've got and the events that we have ongoing as well. So also the campaign had to be bicultural and represent our commitment and values to that. So that was the objective. And because as we know, the visitors are the lifeblood of the business and the museum. So from the research I got, it's pretty well known that, Wellington, Wellingtonians visit Te Papa, but not very often. It's on their back door. So, and I also learned that, once everything had opened up from level 1 and COVID, that people were really keen to visit their family and friends. They hadn't seen them for a while. And so people were traveling from outside of the region into Wellington to catch up with friends and family. So I wanted to sort of take that concept and target Wellingtonians who might have visitors and friends coming into town. And I think Wellingtonians are fairly proud of Te Papa, and they want to be able to sort of share that experience with visitors and friends. And I have a good have a good time here in Wellington. Te Papa's a place to do that. We also wanted to spread the net a bit further and I guess target people in Auckland and Wellington drive time regions who could be planning holidays for during the school holiday period, and also long weekend staycations as well. So they were two groups of people that we wanted to sort of target. But overarching all that really is our segments. And so for those people who are aware of these are the segments who really who visit Te Papa. So we've got our expression segment, and they're all about having social and shared experiences with people. That's where they get their most joy and motivation, sharing with people. I've represented Auckland, so it was important that any creative, any mission we did into Auckland really does tap into that motivation. Stimulation segment, so they're people who really like to be the first to a new exhibition or a new event, and they also talk about that experience a lot with their family and friends. They are the ones who want to be in the know. So we went down a track with them as around a must-see new exhibition. So we've got Te Taio Nature, our newish exhibition, and so there's still a lot to discover and explore there, but also in Gallipoli as well. Now, a lot of people had seen Gallipoli, but they might not have been there for a while. So we wanted to pitch the idea that if they go deeper, the more they'll learn, the more they'll experience, and they'll get something new out of that as well. And then thirdly, our affirmation audience. There are people who really, word of mouth is really important to them when making decision purchase. And so we use visitor quotes from TripAdvisor to try and get them across the line and really encourage them to book that travel to Wellington. And so we used a TripAdvisor quote from a guest, and it was every time we are amazed, amazed, amazed. So having that social proof is important to that audience. But a common linkage that I came across when I was doing my research was that all those segments did have a common motivation, and that was seeking enjoyment. And I think that really comes out of COVID, that, you know, we have been through a tough time and people are looking for a bit of fun, a bit of enjoyment, a feeling of enjoyment in their life. So the campaign had to be quite light as well, and show that sense of fun and enjoyment across the campaign. So I'll show you some of the creative that we came up with, but we did use our big exhibitions, Te Taio Nature, Gallipoli. We also built into that the tours that we have and our retail store as well. So I'll flick on here. So there's an example of some ad shows we've got in Wellington. As you can see, the person with the umbrella and the stormy weather, it's pretty typical Wellington the last couple of weeks. So share Te Papa with your whānau. And you can see there Gallipoli with a group of people having a shared experience with the call to action around go deeper. So that's what we put into Wellington there. And also bicultural. So we've got our Te Reo version as well. This is an example of some ad shows we put into Auckland around a must-see new nature exhibition. So pretty typical hands-on, touchable experience. Young families having a lot of fun. So trying to draw in the concept that, you know, book a trip to Wellington these school holidays. And nice and bright and lively, bright colours as well. And then the Te Reo translation of that as well. And free, we know that's important for people at the moment. So we wanted to highlight that as well. It's another example of an Auckland ad show using that TripAdvisor quote, every time we're amazed, amazed, amazed. And Te Reo translation for that one. And this is some examples, some social posts we did. So we didn't engineer any new creative. We know video works really well for us. And so we did a Gallipoli post around go deeper into Gallipoli at Te Papa in Wellington. if it's your first or 100th time, you know, visit, there's always something new to discover. So trying to promote that, yeah, the more you go, the more you discover, the more you'll learn out of it. And so these videos we had available, we just changed the end card. And so the final piece of information they saw was pretty much around, yeah, book your trip to Wellington, and with those same headlines around go deeper and must see new exhibition as well for Te Tao Nature. And this was some native advertising as well. So we used native advertising. So they are the adverts that you see on stuff. They look like editorial, but they really are sort of sponsored posts. And on the right-hand side there, this is one that popped up and Trade Me. You can see that I'm into kite surfing, and so this one popped up on when I was searching for some new kite surf gear. And we personalised this a little bit. So this headline was Māori Battalion Stories. And so this appeared in Auckland and Wellington. And these were on the left-hand side, you can see some of the different headlines we used. So Wellington, buy New Zealand tonga at Te Papa. So in Wellington, we have a focus around buying local, shopping local, eating local. So we wanted to tap into that concept as well. And you'll sort of see that some of the ones, the click-through rate was high in Auckland as well. And so some examples there. And the final piece is just, I wanted to talk about some of the learnings that I got out of this campaign. And so one of the big ones is the need to be flexible. As we know, we've gone through the different levels, they've come around really quickly. So what I had an initial concept in my head, I had to move and pivot that pretty quickly to the different changing from level 2 to level 1, and any changes in visitor sentiment as well. So always in the back of my head, what's my plan B? So if the unfortunate happens, we go back to the level 2, then I've got a campaign in the back pocket I can whip out and make the most of that. And yeah, looking ahead as well, as David, you know, pointed out, getting research around what things might look like in the next 6 months and be able to quickly and adapt to those. Because one thing I've learned is that every week seems to be different at the moment. And so just, yeah, I don't have the perfect solutions, but getting something out there that that's got a sound foundation around the research and the strategy, I think is important. Yeah, and understanding the segments, what the motivations are, and then forming a strategy around that. And your tactics can change, you know, so you might have a different headline or a different way to approach things, but keeping the strategy front of mind, not to get off track around that. As we know, the budgets have shrunk a little bit, and so I thought I'd just share some of the learnings that I've got out of doing this campaign. So there are some really good advertising rates at the moment, and yeah, don't be afraid to negotiate as well. So take advantage of those. Understand your market, understand the segments. That'll be you're more effective you'll be. So if you really understand what's driving those visitors, then you can really tap into those motivations and get some great creative out there to bring them in the door. Test the headlines and test creative. So I've been down showing our hosts and testing some of our headlines with visitors. So when I did a headline, must see new exhibition, that really resonated with a lot of people and a lot of visitors. So that was one that I felt was important to use in this campaign as well. Leveraging the networks, yeah, connecting up to Wellington NZ, as I've spoken about. Wellington Airport, reached out to Wellington Airport. They were very keen to support us, and we wanted to support them as well. So we're able to get some of our marketing material into Wellington Airport in time for school holidays. So all those people arriving into Wellington, they will be able to see Papa and what we're able to offer. And also the Marketing Association, they've got some great resources as well to help with forming any campaign and learning there. And also found using our existing assets are really valuable because I was able to move really quickly with those. I was able to adapt them a little bit and get something out there you know, linked back to the strategy and the campaign and the objectives we're trying to achieve. So yeah, overall we're seeing a real lift in visitor numbers to our website, particularly from Auckland, leading into the campaign. I think it's about 22% of website visits came from Auckland into the Tataya Nature exhibition, for example, and we've seen that rise up to about 36%. So we are having a bit of an impact into the Auckland region there, and our visitor numbers are slowly going up over time. It is a slow progress, so I'll keeping it abreast of that and track those numbers as well, and talking to our hosts and our visitors and our survey results as well, keeping on top of that to see what's bringing people in and have they seen this and that, and just yeah, just trying to keep on top of things really, and because as things do change. So yeah, that's a bit of a quick wrap, and just thought I'd offer, yeah, if anyone wants to bounce any ideas off, if they've got some ideas or they want to talk more about what we've done here under a marketing campaign, happy please sing out. We're just a Zoom away, and we're going to share and want to talk through anything that we can do to help everyone at the moment. So yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity.
Kia ora, Craig. That's a really comprehensive and well presented and planned campaign. I'm just seeing some definite common threads here. Knowing who your audience is and might be is obviously really a key aspect. Paula, I'm just wondering how you have gone about in your local region. You talked a lot about how your audience is your locals, and I wondered how you've worked on understanding those audiences.
Yeah, that takes time, Philippa, and I think it was getting them in here as well, particularly with the school students. I think prior to that, there's always been the mature age group that enjoy reminiscing in a museum, and that was easily identified for me. But the school children, I sort of targeted them for a number of reasons, but the children are really good at telling mum and dad. And that age group, I find that middle age sector quite difficult to get into the museum. And yeah, that was one way of doing that. The more familiar the children became with our museum, the more excited they got about it, especially the environmental program, because they thrive in that environment, because they're doing that all in the field. And so, yeah, that next thing, they're bringing mum and dad in. And also too, I think that collaboration, particularly in a really small town, that nobody's going to come to Kitikiti just for the museum. So like in our, we have a sponsored area, which is the wildlife area. And so I have, at the moment, Ongatiti Forest Project. They're a really successful volunteer project up in our Kaimai range, and they do predator trapping up there all the time. So having them have a display in the wildlife area is letting our community know what they do, but it also brings in a new visitor, because they generally may have not been here before, but that display brought them in. And because that aligns with predator-free Bay of Plenty and predator-free New Zealand, there's free rat traps. You know, if they take a brochure, they get a rat trap. So I think that's it. I just every area I look at, I try and see how I can get the people that are missing to connect with the museum. And particularly in a small town, it works really well. Working with open air art, they're our murals. Kitikiti is the mural town. That's what we're known for. And so if they've got like our next exhibition is part of it is 140 years of Kachi rugby. So by having an exhibition around rugby, it will bring in a new client. And I think that's it, just really extending yourself as far as how can I connect these groups to the museum. And because of our funny geographic shape that goes around Tauranga out to Te Puke, as part of the next exhibition, Champions in Our Field, there's 3 focuses, one being 140 years of Kachi rugby. And of course, David Gallagher, the first originals captain, he was an Ulster boy from Kachi. So that's a big draw card. From Te Puke, Denny Holm, the racing car driver, 33 times on the world podium. We're bringing in his first MG that he won his first race at Ardmore. So that brings in Te Puke. It brings in the car enthusiasts. So I will run ads in the MG Car Club booklet. And then, of course, Waiheke Beach is the other end of the Western Bay region. They're one of the oldest life-saving clubs in New Zealand. So they will have a focus as well. So they will be the 3 focuses on Champions in Our Field. And it's just stretching the region to get that buy-in. And of course, it is for political reasons as well.
Thank you, Paula. That's very imaginative and innovative and really targeting well. David, I just wonder, you talked a bit about, I mean, Paula mentioned working with her regional tourism organisation, and you talked a bit about those, the role that they have. I wonder if you have something you could add about how museums could work more closely with those regional organisations and what they might be able to perhaps help the regional tourism organisations with.
Yeah, I think that there's probably one key message behind that, and that is that regional tourism organisations are always hungry for new content. They want new stories to tell, whether that's going through news media or marketing or social media. So you guys have got all the stories in the world. That's what museums are about, isn't it? So how can you bring those stories to life? How can they help you bring those stories to life so that a snippet can be sent out to the world that then gets the customer back to you? And they'll all be hungry for content because you know, we are, if you like, in a bit of a competitive space here, and giving your local RTO that exciting story would be exactly what they'd be looking for. And sitting down and talking to them about what the stories that they may be able to sell to if they're doing media for mills. And often with the media, we find that what the media really wants is the story about the people behind the story. Now that could be the story of the people in your exhibitions, but it could also be the stories about you or your people operating the museum, and how there's a connection between someone working in a museum and a story that's told in the museum. So really thinking about how you can give the RTO content with a real personal story behind it.
That's excellent advice. Someone in the chat has asked whether anybody has thought about targeting marketing to the people in managed quarantine who are going to be looking for things to do when they come out. Craig, I wonder if that might be something that Te Papa could do, a pamphlet on the breakfast tray.
That's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah, maybe not a pamphlet, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't really quite know how to answer that question. I
might help you, Craig. Okay.
Thanks, David. Yeah.
So I think what we need to be aware of is that these people are going to be bored to death for 14 days, and they're going to be sitting in the hotel room they're going to be watching the TV or scrolling through things on their phone or the laptop. So if you can find a way of making sure your content is being delivered to them, that's probably the best thing to do. Now, if you are in Yeah, and these are predominantly people, I guess, who are in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, because that's where the facilities are. If you're a museum in one of those regions, the chances are that they'll be connecting it with people at home. So how do you get into the Facebook group? You know, so I know Philippa and I both live in Karori. How do you get into the I Love Karori group? Because someone in our 15,000 people community will have somebody coming home. So how do you get your messages that way into the lives of these people who are going to be very bored?
Yeah.
It's interesting that you should have mentioned that, because just yesterday I made a suggestion to Papa marketing through Jack Fisher, who I think is running the Matariki campaign, that there might be an opportunity to share some of our Matariki online content with those in managed isolation, because it seems like, you know, Matariki is a distinctly New Zealand occasion. It might be a really nice way for New Zealanders returning back to New Zealand to, you know, engage with something really positive, as opposed to, you know, some of the negative stuff that's been circulating through the press. And, you know, and also be aware that New Zealand's changed a bit in the time that some of them would have been away. So, you know, so there might be some really nice opportunities around the Matariki occasion that could be targeted to that group.
I think that's an interesting point you made, Victoria. The you know, effectively a lot of these people are New Zealanders, but they're almost like New Zealanders, and how do you treat them like almost like international tourists?
Those are great suggestions. We're pretty much out of time. I wonder if any of our presenters have anything else that they would like to add. There's been a little bit of information shared through the chat, one of which was that the new research on the culture segments shows that they all agree that what people are now looking for is joy and connection. I think Matariki's a good way to express some of that, and certainly museums are very well positioned to be able to offer ways to experience some joy and some connection. So Paula, have you got anything else you want to add?
Just for me to close, just the power of having employed Zest consultants. If some of the smaller museums want to have a look at our website as it is today, and then after the 10th of August, have a look at the new branding, because it was a real eye-opener, that journey, having, even though I'm from a marketing background, to have a professional company come in with fresh eyes and do all of our rebranding and our logo. And I never thought that I'd ever step down from that Ulster orange, but their philosophy was that it was a separatist colour, and I'd never thought about it like that. And the new logo reflects our iwi, it reflects our fire station building, and yeah, so it just might be helpful for the smaller museums. And yeah, but I've learned a lot too. And Tourism Bay of Plenty, to pick up what David said, they are hungry for new products, particularly here in the Bay, because of course White Island is still very fresh, being our #1 tourist attraction in the Bay of Plenty. But they are always looking for new products, and they help and guide and give us support. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share and learn once again from others.
Thank you, Paula. Now, I think Craig looks as though he's being kicked out of his meeting room.
I am actually.
Last words, Craig.
No, thanks for the opportunity. And yeah, if anyone wants to sing out with just bounce any ideas off, then yeah, please sing out. And one thing that has gone really well at Te Papa at the moment is we've done a lot of soundscaping, sound events, something a bit different in the museum, and our visitor feedback's been fantastic. So we've had opera singing, we've had local musicians, and it's gone down really, really well. So yeah, if that's an idea for other museums around Aotearoa, then yeah, it's a good one. So yeah.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
and definitely follows up on your talking about being flexible and not being afraid to try some new things.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
been kicked out.
David, anything more from you?
I'm just going to be brief. I think there's been a few comments about joy and making sure people can have fun. There's a lot of serious stuff happening in the world, and I think there's a really good message there. Make sure that people can go away with a smile on their faces. Thank you for your time and listening to me. I've enjoyed this.
Kia ora. Well, that's a bit of a wrap today then, and I hope that everybody who's joined us online has got some useful takeaways, and thank you for sharing from our presenters. If anybody does want to contact Craig, you can do that through Victoria and National Services Te Pārangi, and any other contacts, do get in touch with me. We will be putting this video up online. It always takes a wee while to download and cut the ends off, so it probably won't be till Monday, but we'll be able to share it with you then. So I hope the sunshine keeps shining on us over the weekend. Stay warm, stay well, and ka kite anō.